Good morning and welcome to Invitation to a Conversation. My guest today is Ms. Dewana Walker and Mr. Kelly Mathis. And our subject today is This is what voting looks like. Good morning, Ms. Walker and Mr. Mathis. How y'all doing today?
I'm doing great. Good morning, Pam. Thank you for the invite.
Yes, good
You
morning. Thanks for
welcome.
the invite. Absolutely.
Yes. Are you both natives of Brunswick, Georgia?
Born and raised and
Yep.
still being
Yes,
raised.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Born and bred.
Oh, yeah, you're going to always be raised as long as you have a mother and father. You're sure right about that. What got you both interested in being co-founders for a voting nonprofit organization?
Well, I'm
I'll
gonna
let
go
you go first.
first. I think we started this. This is what voting looks like as a fluke. We've always been active voters since the age of 18. That was kind of like a rite of passage for us. You know, you get your driver's license, then your grandparents tell you, your parents tell you, you need to register to vote. So we've always been active voters. But when the 2016 election came about, I was in Home Depot with a friend of mine, and we went and did the early voting, and one of our counterparts had stated, "Oh, I didn't know you guys voted." And yeah, we vote. Oh, well, who did you vote for? The candidate of our choice. But when this particular person said that, it was like, oh, wow, it was something profound. Like, oh, people really don't think we get out and vote. So I came back to the job. I talked to Kelly about it. Kelly is an active voter as well as an early voter. And we just took a selfie. Kelly took the selfie of me and my friend. And we was like, this is what voting looks like. So we came up, everybody like to use social media. So Kelly suggested that we start posting pictures and trying to get everyone to vote. And so we came up with this is what voting looks like.
All right. Thank you for that. Mr. Mathis?
Well, I mean, just to kind of piggyback on pretty much what Dewana stated, that just being engaged and understanding the ramifications of voting and how it impacts our daily life was something for me that was very important for me. I'll be honest with you, I kind of took it for granted that people just voted because that's what you're supposed to do, and I just took that for granted and just assumed that everybody voted. And then when the 2016 election, like Dewana said, came around, and we see the final results of that, I just didn't understand, how or why people would actually, you know, vote the way they voted in order for that outcome to be what it was. So when she came back to the job that particular day and told me exactly what that person said to her, I just said, well, no, maybe I was right that people don't take voting, as serious as maybe we do. And just like she said, we know that a lot, people love to take selfies and post them and things like that. So I figured that maybe to engage a particular demographic that we wanted to really engage in voting, let's do something that we know that they like to do, and that's to take selfies. But this time, let's put something in that selfie and, put the little sticker that says that you voted. And so, I mean, it caught on really big. And that's what really got us engaged in starting that this is what voting looks like, because what we wanted to do was paint the picture of a coalition of people, all nationalities, all races, all party affiliations. This is what it looks like. It looks like everybody actively being engaged in it, actively participating in it. And that's what we wanted to show. And this is what voting looks like.
And see, y'all answered one of my questions. What does
Okay.
voting look like? And we're in a voting season, so I thought this conversation would be great for people who may hesitant to vote, may
Yeah.
never have voted, or for people who voted and stopped voting based on who's running in the election.
Right.
This conversation is going to be broken down into two categories because Ms. Walker belongs to a women's voting organization. So I would like to delve into that before we get back into this is what voting looks like that both of y'all are part of.
Yes,
Ms.
ma'am.
Walker, tell us something about the League of Women Voters and what's the mission and goal for it.
Well, the League of Women Voters is really pretty much got women coming together, all nationalities, galvanizing, educating, and pushing mobilization for voting. If you've noticed that women are heavy voters in every election, so instead of just focusing on women, we wanted to broaden that. So we're here, we're out, we're saying, hey, look at us, we're women, we're taking the lead on voting. If you notice, with the election, the past election of the gubernatorial election with Stacey Abrams and Governor Brian Kemp, look at who was out there in the streets doing grassroots movements as far as voting. It was women. It was women taking the lead. So instead of we're using our power as women to galvanize a community, not only women, but we're using it for those who are in age rate, the 17 and a half on up. We're pushing for men to vote. We're pushing for every nationality to get out, exercise your right to vote.
And what are women saying that why voting is important to them?
Well, with the current laws that have been passed, as far as going with what we can do with our body, with as far as contraceptive and all of those issues, women have the right. They are saying, "Hey, your voice does not need to be silent on issues that pertaining you, that's pertaining your health." And right now, a woman's right to choose is at stake now.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
why not, come together as a united force across all nationalities and say, hey, we're not sitting back. We're taking a stand. We're actually going to say, hey, we got the right to choose. This is our body. As long as we're in this country and this is our country, we have that right. So we'll not be silent.
Has the number of women voters increased over the years since this organization been organized?
Yes, significantly.
Yeah.
There's been an increase. There's a consistency of women voters. You will see a decrease in male voters, but the consistency of women voters is continuing to be on the rise. And you can look at what we have in the Senate, in office, people that are in office. You see more women are being pushed into the political arena.
Mm-hmm. It seems like the men, I don't want to say this, but it seems like the more focus is on empowering women to take corporations, be the CEOs, be the executive directors. Over the military, it's just an increase of women out there working now. And you're correct. All right, let's get into what this is what voting looks like. What either one of y'all can answer this. What is the earliest age of a voter?
17 and a half.
Right.
Okay. And what is the little there's a little guideline if you're about to turn into that age, like how many months in between from 16 to 17? It's a little short window that you can vote if your birthday is within a certain month.
The guideline, from my understanding, is right at the age of 17 and a half. And now let's take a look, and we have to really be cautious. We don't want to go below that guideline, because now the SBS 202 bill that's out, they are cutting corners to prevent and to silence votes. So we want to adhere in the guidelines of the 17 and a half one up.
Is Go ahead, Mr. Mathis.
No, I was just going to add to that with what Dewana was saying about that 17 and a half. And I hope that people understand that. We want to make this clear. If you are 17 prior to the November election, you can still register, and you can register to vote as long as you turn 18 before election day. So
Okay.
don't think that, okay, I turned 18 in October, but right now I'm 17, so I can't vote in this upcoming November election. That's not true. You can go ahead and get registered as long as you turn 18 before that November election takes place.
Okay. And what is and y'all explain the mission of the this is what voting looks like. Explain to us voters education.
Voter education. Want to go ahead, Kelly?
Oh, go ahead, D.
Voter education is essential to connecting the people with the actual vote. And it's interesting because Kelly and I we talk every day about voting. It's like our second conversation. So, and we just had a conversation about making the connection why we switched our focus on voter registration to voter education. It's one thing to get register a person to vote. However, the process of in between and getting them actually in the poll, in the voting process, and getting them to vote, is a misconnection. And that connection is education. We notice that everybody does not have the true understanding of the voting process, even to the point of the positions of the political offices that could be held. Like even with the local election, what is the authority in the position of the DA? You know, what does the sheriff office, or what can a commissioner do? A lot of people, it's more than just registering to vote, it's educating them on voting and connecting their vote to everyday living. And that all encompasses voter education. When you connect voting to everyday living, just as minute as voting for you to vote is so important as the medicine that you take.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Laws govern what type of medicines that you take. That's why you have the FDA. Even down to climate control, who we put in office, with the air that we breathe, the quality of water that we drink, the types of clothes that we wear. When you connect, look at gas prices. Gas prices soared. But when you connect everyday living, educating them on that and connecting it to everyday living, that's why we push voter education.
And it's not just enough for people to come out and meet the candidates. Like you said, they need to connect their everyday living to that. Because what I hear in the community is most people say they don't know anything about the person. So how can you vote right if you don't know what each person does? So
And I'll piggyback on that. Because one thing I noticed, and Kelly, maybe you could chime in, when we go out and meet candidates, a lot of people, those candidates come into our communities, but we don't have anything to ask them. Mm-hmm. And I know with Kelly, he pushes how you going to help our community, what is in it, you know. And Kelly, you can expound on that.
It kind of goes hand in hand when we talk about education. I think everybody understands the concept of voting, because so oftentimes we hear, well, I don't want to vote. It doesn't matter. They're going to do what they want to do anyway. And that is true in a sense, because if you don't vote, then you allow whoever wants to come into that public office to put out any type of policy or legislation that is going to eventually impact your everyday life. What we wanted to do was to educate everybody on not only voting, but also how it is going to impact your life. The person that you are looking at to vote for, how is this person going to write a policy that you think is going to be more beneficial to you or more detrimental to you? Once we were able to try to connect that, to understand and let people know exactly what the clerk of court does, what the sheriff's office does, what the DA does. For example, you know, as we all know, the situation that happened here in Glenn County with Ahmaud Arbery, and everyone found out exactly the power of the district attorney's office and how they almost were able to get away with it based on what the district attorney was to do and not to do. So we galvanized that. Everybody understood that, and everybody came out to vote. That's how they were able to hold Jackie Johnson accountable. But we have to understand that all of those different tenets of political offices, it goes just beyond just the DA's office. Everything kind of goes hand in hand when you really look at it. And what we've been trying to do is make that connection so that everybody kind of understands that it's not just the presidential election. The president is not going to be the only person that's going to impact your everyday life. Your local commissioners is going to impact it more heavily than the president will. Your local state attorney, your state senators and state representatives will impact your daily life a lot more than what the president will, because the president is on the federal level. So what we've been trying to do is educate people not only on the process of how to register and when to register, but also all of the different tenets of it as far as the roles of those positions, how it's impacting you, and how it can impact you. And that's been one of the trying things, is educating people on that, because what we don't want to do, we don't want to discourage anyone, but we actively want people to participate in it, because we died for it.
So, do you think a job description ought to come with the candidates when they're out there campaigning for the position that they want to go into? Because a lot of times I tell people that you really have to start voting and looking at your local elections, because those people start locally, then they climb the ladder and go to state, and then they go to federal. And and the second question is, do you think that is teaching voting education should be in our schools to teach our middle schoolers and our high schoolers that will soon be voting ages of the process, without being which side you're going to vote for?
I think just to answer your first question, when you say a job description, are you asking the job description of that particular candidate, like what is their background, or are you asking what is their belief or philosophy as far as the policies that they want to push?
Like you said, if you're going to be the DA, what is the duty of the DA?
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. Educate the people, because that candidate have a job description with their name when they're running for that particular office, to give us a better understanding of what their job duties will entail if we choose to vote them into office.
Well, to answer that first question, yes, with an exclamation point. We definitely need a job description on every candidate, so that way people will understand and can make that connection of this. Oh, so this is exactly what that person does. The second point that you asked about whether or not that should be in the school, yes, another exclamation point. Because the civics class, and I know DeWanna can attest to this, man. When we were in school, civics was a requirement, and now it's not even taught. And civics breaks down everything that we're actually talking about. It breaks down the different branches of government. It breaks down which branches of government is governing what does what, the executive branch, the judicial branch, the legislative branch, what each department and branch does. But now that's not being taught, and it's not being taught for a reason, because right now what you have is a system of minority rule. So that way, if you're not educated to know exactly what each branch does, how it impacts you, if you don't know and you're blind, then guess what? We can do whatever it is we want to do, because you're not educated enough to know exactly what it is we're doing. So I do believe that you definitely need that back in the schools, so that kids can understand how the process works. It's not about trying to indoctrinate them on a liberal view or a conservative view. It's just about educating them on the process and how it works and how it operates.
Yeah, because a lot of times, even for myself, before I got into understanding more about the voting process, they will blame one person, like the president or somebody else, if their resolution doesn't go through. But it goes through a whole bank of people who have to write it up, send it through, and then it gets to the final desk of the president. And so I think that should be one of the requirements going back into our school system.
Yes.
Explain, and these are either one of you or both of y'all can explain these. Explain engagement. How can we get them more engaged?
Well, you have to be connected to the community. What I've been seeing, you having people relocating from up north, coming down south, and particularly establishing roots in Glenn County. But if you don't know the pulse and the tone of your community, it's going to be very impossible to engage. One thing about Kelly and myself, we was born and raised in Glenn County. We went through got our formative education years through the Glenn County school system. So we kind of know the pulse of the community because we're out there. We're out there not only in our churches, we're out there, with our organizations, affiliations, but even in our employment positions. But we're out there as just common people in the community. So you got to be able to go up under the tree on L Street and say, "Hey, brother, let me talk to you about so and so," and being able to connect without judgment, because a lot of the people who are under the tree on L Street may have been convicted felons and have completed their obligations, but want to. And plenty times we get pulled. How can I get my rights reinstated? I thought I could never vote since this happened. That's how you engage. That's how you go and get, because they don't know. That's how you educate. But you got to meet people where they are. It can't be a one-time thing. Can't be a one-time thing. No. So when you see them, I could go up on L Street, go up and say, "Hey, how y'all doing? Hey, Mr. Warner, what's going on?" Because it's establishing relationships, which you want to get people to start knowing, hey, even if it's something like, my mama got her water bill is too high and we think it's a leak. Do you know somebody that I can go and get to do it? Oh yeah, I know somebody. But now let's get ready to talk about the joint water sewer position. You see how it leads to why you need to vote? So that's part of that engagement. You got to meet people where they are and not be afraid and come free from judgment and just being able to connect with the people in the community.
And that's why some of those longtime politicians, before, they used to tell us what they wanted to give us and what we needed. But as you said, everybody's needs are different. So you have to meet people where they're at and ask them what is needed. Because somebody might not need, the same thing. So you got to meet them where they're at. And that's where we are right now in society, is meeting people where they're at, opposed to say, this is what you're going to get now, this is what you're going to get later, or this is what you have to do to get this. Right. Mr. Mathis, would you like to expound on that?
Pretty much the same thing that DeWanda was saying. I mean, it's definitely meeting people where they are. I mean, you'll be surprised even in the barbershops. And when you get engaged with that and to talk about it, you'll be surprised at how much a lot of guys know about it. However, they just don't talk about it because it's not a part of their everyday conversation. Right. We generally want to talk about sports and those types of things. But when you really get them engaged in talking about policy, talking about politics, and you're able to, to explain to them some things, and then they can give feedback on it, then you can kind of get a better understanding. So now this conversation can carry on. And once it carries on, now we can spread to other people. But the engagement piece is going to be critical, especially when you're talking about a demographic that is generally not been as engaged. If we're going to go ahead and talk about it, let's just be honest. Unfortunately, we have not been as engaged as we probably could or should be, because a lot of us feel disengaged because we don't feel like no one is hearing us. No one has done any policies that were beneficial to us. I hear a lot of times, even we go back to 2008. We all know what happened in 2008. So we got complacent with that because we thought that, hey, this person is going to do this and this because they're in this position. But it goes back to what I said about the civics piece. We think the president is able to do all and to be all, but it's not, because it has to work hand in hand with the Senate as well as the House. So if that particular president does not have the body in both of those chambers to get certain legislation passed, it's not going to happen. So I do know that, a lot of us felt disengaged from 2008 to 2016 because we thought that, 2016, we thought certain things was going to happen because of office.
But, and I would go ahead, Ms. Walker.
I want to narrow that down. Let's come back up to, and I'm going to use the murder of the Ahmaud Arbery. What happened when I seen the most that the African American community had come together, the African American community voting, being engaged in what goes on in our community. we had to capitalize off of that, but with respect of what was going on with Ahmad's family. We wanted to do that respectfully, but we used that opportunity to say, this is why things happen. This is why you need to get out and vote. And vote because not only the DA has the power to say, yeah, I'm going to try a case or not, but you got to vote because you're looking at people who are in jail and can't post bond because the bond is excessively high. And not only they may have had a job, but then they done missed X amount of days, so now they're fired.
Yes.
They're fired. Then if they had a place to live or a car note or this, all of that now is like we hustling backwards now. So we should have, that should have been another point after the 2008 elections that we should have with the situation with Ahmaud Arbery, that we should seize that opportunity and run like we're running a marathon, because it is a marathon. It just don't stop there. And what I can say, I see we done got a little bit complacent, and I'm just going to be honest with our community. We felt like, okay, we got the verdict, and now Jackie Johnson is out of office, but hey, we still got work to do. We still have work to do. Now it's not, my daddy used to say, put your foot on their neck, keep it going. That's what we do. We got to keep it going. So the engagement piece, we really need to get that fire. I mean, it's flickering. We need that thing to flame.
Yeah,
and I think it's like Mr. Mathis said, you know, the discussion of voting was like this discussion of racism. You know, no one wanted to talk about it because they didn't want to step on each other's toes, because they didn't want to tell somebody about their political views or what part of political stance they took, whether Republican, Democrat, conservative, or liberal. And the same thing with racism. You know, they keep it to themselves until something happened, like the Ahmaud Arbery case, and then everybody comes out. And like you said, Ms. Walker, just because we got the verdict, that doesn't mean we just voted for her to be out and then it goes away. We have to keep on going, got to keep on going, because people seize the opportunity when we get complacent and don't vote. So now they say they sitting back now. So now it's time for us to go run. You know what I'm saying? And then they're going to have to catch up with us again. But if you consistently do it, like we tell our children what's right and what's wrong and how to be adults thriving and working in this world, we have to use voting the same way. All right. Our next thing is mobilization. Explain mobilization.
I would say mobilization is being able to, and we've done several voter registration drives here locally in Glenn County. We've done one in McIntosh County. And it's just mobilizing and getting things set up so that way people will have a stopping point to where they can do certain things like get registered to vote, get educated to vote. It's also not just utilizing this is what voting looks like. We mobilize with other organizations in order to get it. Because if we want to go far, we have to do it together. But if we wanted to go fast, it'll just be me and Dewana. But we wanted to expand and grow larger than that. So that's why we actually work with other organizations to mobilize voter registrations, voter registration drives, and just trying to ensure that we're trying to touch in every aspect, because we can't just do it all by ourselves. We have to mobilize. And if you really noticed, to kind of, I won't say go back on what we talked about, but when you look at keeping the pressure on and ensuring that we are keeping the pressure on, this is the reason why you have a Stacey Abrams running again, because she knew, and Governor Kemp also knows, that in 2018, if certain things would not have happened with him holding the office he was holding as he's running for a higher office, we'll be talking about Governor Abrams right now.
That's right.
So if you paid attention, you saw when he won, what did they do? Then they started implementing different voting laws, more restrictive voting laws, because they knew that the turnout in this year is going to probably even be greater than it was in 2018.
That's right.
it is putting those connections together to go back to even with voting and being registered to vote. We always talk about how unfair our trials are when it relates to us. Well, guess why that is? Because we don't have any people to pull from to go into the juries. So if you're not registered to vote, you can't be a part of a jury. That's why the jury makeup it looks the way it looks, because generally there are more whites who are registered to vote than there are blacks. So there's a lot of different ramifications about voting, and this is part of that voter education, that it's not just about going to the polls and voting for somebody. There are also other benefits of that voting. So you can be possibly selected to be on a jury such to the magnitude like an Ahmaud Arbery, to where you can have an input on that outcome. So,
and they have to understand, that the saying of that my vote doesn't count, but it does count, and they don't want to do jury duty because they think the justice system is not going to be in their favor. But until you try it, you have to do what you need to do in order to be a part of it.
Pam, when I hear people say my vote doesn't count, that kind of that does something to me.
Yeah, man.
It really does something to me, because I think about all of the legislation that's being passed now and in the past is to take away the power of the vote. Voting equals power. And once we realize that, then we will operate and do everything that we have to do to secure, because that's a sacred vote. People didn't die just for the sake of, I want to check a box. Our forefathers understood the right to vote. You look at the March on Selma, what that signified. Protect and vote, getting us a way that we can vote. And when I look at the late Senator John Lewis, laws that he tried to put in place before he died to help keep our vote as safe as possible. Things are being dismantled when it comes to protecting our right to vote. But you got to be careful. You looking at the African American vote, but then you have the Latino community vote coming right behind us. That's when you got the immigration laws that's coming in place. So we have to be able to pay attention when we're watching CNN. Sometimes it's okay to get off Facebook. It's okay to switch your channel from 94.6 or whatever it is, the most hip hop station, and tune in to CNN and tune into Urban View and get those nuggets, because our vote is a sacred vote and we need to have it protected. So that's why we push This Is What Voting Looks Like. We didn't know starting this was on a fluke, was gonna amount to the magnitude that it is, because we always had conversation about politics and everything. But I believe everything happens for a reason, and I think it was just in me and Kelly's divine purpose and God's will that we push out voter education, voter mobilization, and voter engagement when it comes to our community.
And Mr. Mathis, do you want to say something off of that?
No, not really. I think we pretty much, I think DeWanna has pretty much kind of surmised everything in our viewpoints, on that, because I don't want it to go. I don't want it to go in a way that we feel like we're trying to push people or force people into doing anything. I do want my community in particular to understand that. And if you look in history, when all the civil rights bills were passed from 64, 65, and 66, they have been slowly chipping away at those for the past 40 to 50 years. If you pay attention to a lot of the legislation that's been coming out from various states and from the national level, they've been slowly chipping away at it. And I think we have to understand that we have to preserve that, because it's also hard to get those civil rights. So if we allow, other people who may not have our interests at heart, then what's going to happen is all of that hard work that was done by John Lewis and Dr. King and Malcolm X and all those others will go in vain because we've allowed other people to come in and chip away at the hard work that they have put in place. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's why we really have a passion for doing this, and we work so hard to try to push it because we have people who are coming behind us. We
Mm-hmm.
have kids that we are looking out for right now. That's
Mm-hmm.
going to
That's
impact what
right.
has going to happen with them in their future. So that's why we really go as hard as we go with all of this.
And the main topic, voter registration.
Mm-hmm.
Explain voter registration.
I'll let you do that, D.
Voter registration. And what detail do you want me to explain about the process of?
Well, political voting process is the next subtitle. So
Mm-hmm.
just, or you can mix them both together, either way you want to do it.
Well, I want to go with voter registration. The key thing that I would like to get out is just to pay attention to those specific dates that, when it is available for you to register to vote. We always say start at 17 and a half. Go ahead, make sure your household is registered to vote. Check your voter registration status because a lot of people have been purged from the voting
Yeah.
process. But we really want the key points is to know that the important dates. When is the deadline to register to vote? You need, and if you would check on our Facebook page of This Is What Voting Looks Like, we have key dates on the process of when is the deadline to register to vote, when it's early voting. But you need a driver's license, or you got your last four of your social security number, a valid address. You It's simple. Voter
Mm.
registration is simple. If I
Are,
could
are,
It
surmise
could be more
that.
simpler. It
are
could be
you,
more simpler if they really wanted to do that, because I think a lot of times also when you talk about the change of address for those people who move a lot, they don't think about going to the Board of Elections as well to get their change of address because they're going to be mailing whatever literature or those little ballot cards. They're going to mail it to the last known address, and so if that person is not there or they don't receive that back, that's the name that could be purged off of the roll because they're not living at that address,
mm-hmm.
even though that they may still be living, they just not at the last known address. So it's all of that encompasses the voter registration piece that we want to make sure that everybody is abreast of all of that and can keep everything current. So that way there will be no reason why their vote would not be allowed to be counted.
Mm-hmm. Can you take your voter registration when you're seeking people to that aren't registered? Can you go into businesses or schools, like after school or doing things like that? Is
Mm-mm.
that something that we can see if that can be done, or is it still the process of going to the election board and mailing it in?
I would love to see just how we have seniors that when they graduate, they have to check whether they want to be a part of the secrets, not the Secret Service, but the
Let
armed
us.
forces and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Just like you go and get a driver's license. I would love to see in the school system when seniors are doing their exit um, paperwork with the counselors that they're offered the opportunity to register to vote. Um, as far as going in certain businesses as well as certain neighborhoods, certain neighborhoods does not allow soliciting, but you go out there knocking on the door registering to vote, they don't allow that. But I think wherever the opportunity is for us to put voter registration in, we should capitalize off of it. But that is on my wish list that we will allow voter registration within in the school system. And I think a couple of years ago they had a youth group called Youth Speaks, which they was actually registering students to vote. So maybe that has changed, but as far as us, I think it has to be a something that's student
Student led.
centered, student led, that they're able to have the opportunity to register other students to vote.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Mathis, you wanted to say something?
No, I was just saying
Okay.
pretty much it had to
Yeah.
be student led.
Hmm. And then the time frame to register to vote. That's why I think if we could go into different businesses or things like that, give them an opportunity if they have the night shift or the morning shift, that we can go to them opposed to having them always come to us. The next subtopic is political voting process. What's the process?
Kelly.
When you say, okay, so when you say what's the process, what do you mean?
What is the process? You get registered, then you go out there, you meet the candidates,
Okay.
things like that.
Well, once you get registered to vote, I think now the next step is going to be, who do you think you want to cast your ballot for? So this is where understanding and knowing what the roles are of the positions that you're going to be voting for on that ballot, what the referendums is. What I mean by referendum could be, are you voting to have another e-splosh? Yes or no? And understanding what that e-splosh is going to be used for. Getting all of that information and knowing that is also going to help you when you get inside of the polling stations. Unfortunately, they don't allow you to take any kind of paperwork with you so you can kind of read and have with you before you make your selections. So all of that stuff has to be done before you go into the polling station and go into that voting booth. One of the things that we were really trying to work hard at, because we're nonpartisan, we wanted to not kind of engage in who they should vote for as the person, but we wanted to educate people on the positions. And it goes back to what you said when you say a job description. So that way people will understand, okay, I'm voting for a person for this position, and this is what this position does. So if I understand that, knowing what the position does, and I have researched both candidates, now I have an understanding of what their belief and what their philosophy and policy is going to be when I make my decision. I don't want to vote for someone, and I'm just saying this for an example, for a Senate position, if I know that they are either pro-choice or pro-life. So if they have a belief on either side and I have a particular belief, then I definitely want to vote for that person who may have my same belief. I don't want to just vote for a senator and I don't know what that person's belief is, because they're going to be able to write a legislation that's going to impact what I believe in. So that whole process is a step-by-step thing. Yes, we're getting registered, doing all of that necessary paperwork. That's step one. Now, step two becomes, all right, who am I going to vote for? What does this position do? So I know who I need to vote for based on the beliefs that I have. Once you have that information, now you can move to step three, understanding when those dates are for early voting and being able to go to that particular precinct that you can go to do your early voting. So that way you will already have all of that done. I know me and Ms. Pam had kind of talked about this before we came on about making it a national holiday. So I don't know if we will get into that now.
We won't get into that. We won't get into that.
I'll leave that alone.
And one of the process is that it's another difficult thing is for people to keep their voter registration card and know what district that candidate represents.
Right.
You know, all the way up to the top, to the senators and congressmen, you have to know what person is over your district.
Right. That's why the address piece is so valuable, because depending on your address determines what district you're in, what region that you're in. So that way you'll know exactly which person you can vote for based on your home address in the district. So you're right. You're absolutely right.
Ms. Walker, you have anything to say on the process of voting?
I agree with the process, what Kelly had outlined. But I think the key piece is that voter education piece, knowing the position and then knowing your candidate. Those are key, because you're going to vote in your best interest and in the interest of your family. And then to piggyback off of that with family, you have people living in multi-generational households. And the way grandma vote is going to be the way baby girl votes. Yeah. So you got to pay attention to that. So it's key to know the candidates, key to know the positions, and key to know where they stand. And when we have opportunities to meet the candidate, it should be something that, you know, they broadcast when the fair is going to be in town. They broadcast, you know, the football games. There needs to be more coming out instead of having key people to come in and talk with these candidates. I would like to see candidates hit the streets, go to the community instead of the community coming to them. Go up under the tree, go to the known hangouts, go to the games, meet the people that way. we shouldn't have to bring certain people to come in and speak. I'm not Kelly. I can say he can kind of speak on my behalf to a certain extent, but not really. You know what I'm saying? I can't go anywhere and say, okay, I'm gonna represent Pam and I'm gonna get this view on this candidate and come back and tell Pam what I think, and it may not align with what your belief is. So that's why it's key for these candidates to get out into the community instead of having the community come to the candidate. So I'm just a stick on that voter education piece, because knowing the position, knowing the candidate is critical in the election process. And then getting out to vote. Can't forget that, because we'll do all of that and don't make it to the poll because work, so that's when that National Day of Voting comes in. Need to be a whole weekend.
And that's what Mr. Mathis and I was talking about prior to coming on this morning. Depending on the weather, depending on what time of day it is, depending on your work shift, a lot of people do not come out to vote. And those who are intentional about voting, they're out there before the doors open. They'll come on their lunch break. They come if they go on before they said, I got to go. I'm getting ready to have surgery in the morning, but I got to do my right to vote. Or I need to be recovering, but I'm coming in here to vote. Everybody should be intentional about going to vote.
And Pam, not to cut you off with that intentionality, you got to think about when the precinct changes, because we've had some precincts to switch.
We get
them to going somewhere else. And when they feel that it's out their way, you got to be cognizant of it. And when we say intentional, go early enough. Do your research early enough. Have a voting plan. Who you gonna take? What time we leave? And how long we may have to stay. Put your snacks in your pocket or in your bag. So we have to be very intentional when it's time to vote.
So we know that we have a couple of more months before our November 8th voting day. So we're going to get into our current voting season. When does early voting start for November coming up? When does early voting start?
I believe, let me get the correct information, September 20th. Let me think. Let me get it right, because I was just looking at this information. Well, the last day to register to vote is October the 10th. Statewide early voting is October 17th. Statewide early voting October 17th. Saturday voting, if I'm not mistaken, for statewide, it's on October 22nd and the 29th. And then we got our election day, which is November 8th. Please bring your ID on that. October early voting is October 7th through November 4th. Saturday voting is October 22nd and October 29th. And the general election is November 8th. And we also have Rise to the Poll. And there is a local number that if you need a ride to the poll, there is a local number that people can contact in order to get Rise to the Poll.
Okay. On November election day, what is the earliest time and the latest time that you can vote on election day?
Election day, it starts at 7 and it ends at 7. It's 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
And we brought up, and the early voting precincts, because we know that the precincts are different opposed to early voting and election day. So where are the precincts for early voting?
Early voting precincts, am I out?
I do know that one of the precincts is definitely at the Board of Elections.
Yes.
And the Board of Elections building is on Gloucester. That's one place. Don't know if they've opened it up to anywhere else outside of the
Board of Elections.
But I do know that definitely.
St. Simon's Island, the fire department area, that may be one. But we do know early voting, we always direct everyone to the Board of Elections.
And I believe Ballard, if Ballard is still an early voting spot. Mail-in ballots. What about the mail-in ballots and the mail-in ballot drop box? Is there a certain, when will the early ballots go out for this election?
I believe they've already went out, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, we can definitely look into that and make sure we put it on our website, because a lot of times they make a quick announcement and you don't hear anything else about it. So we want to make sure we try to get that out. They've also stipulated that they've cut down some of the drop boxes.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely the Board of Elections office is definitely a drop box place that you can bring in your absentee ballots. But we definitely want to make sure we get out the right dates. So please just continue to look on our Facebook page, and we will definitely make sure we get those correct dates and put it out there as soon as we get them, because we want everybody to utilize the early voting.
Mm-hmm. And if y'all would send me those dates and those precincts, I'll advertise it on my Facebook page and in my conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you name the candidates who are running for this November election? I know we have senators and congressmen, but we also have local candidates for the county. Is that correct?
Yes, we do. For the information that we received, I know for Glenn County Commissioner, we have Cornell Harvey, Mayor, our former Mayor of Brunswick. He's running for District 4. We also have County Commissioner at Large, Richard Ingalls.
Mm-hmm.
He's running. We also have Rachel J. Thompson. She's running for School Board District 4. As far as the state, we have Stacey Abrams for governor.
Mm-hmm.
We have Raphael Warnock, U.S. Senate. Wade Herron, U.S. House District 1. Charlie Bailey, Lieutenant Governor. B. Wynn, Secretary of State. Jen Jordan, Attorney General. Alicia Thomas Searcy, State School Superintendent. William Body, Labor Commissioner. Nikita Hemingway, Agricultural Commissioner. Janice Laws Robinson, Insurance Commissioner. Patty Durand, Public Service Commissioner, and Sheila Edwards. She's running for Public Service Commissioner, and that's on the Democratic ballot.
And it's true that every other year we switch from the county elections, and then next year it will be the city election. So
yes.
Off. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Every other year.
Yes. Do y'all can you explain how many districts and what area is within that district?
If I'm not mistaken, I want to say is it 5 districts?
5 districts. Now, as far as demographic area, it's kind of hard because to really outline that, we look at the map. So the districting outline, like with District 1, 2, it's 5 districts. So we
District 5 is definitely is pretty much the city
district
of Brunswick.
So and that comes from Dixville all the way to 4th Street, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And then I'm in District 4. So that is the area of...
It's almost like North Glenn County.
North Glenn.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So...
Yeah, I'm in District 2, which is anywhere from Jekyll Island all down 17, all the way up through 82 and I want to say it crosses over into some more area, and it's hard to say because they've redistricted those lines.
A lot of it.
So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where it all stretches at now.
Mm-hmm.
I do know that when I was on the board of elections, that was one of that was a big conversation piece about them redistricting those lines, and that was about 7-8 years ago at that time. So I'm pretty sure it definitely has changed more now.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's another reason why it's very important that we look at those districts and those areas that they cover,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't want it to be to where one particular district has more influence on other districts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's
And
like District 1 goes all the way back to Waynesville. Yeah, Waynesville. District 2 is pretty much, let me see. I'm just trying to get an outline.
mm-hmm.
District 3 is Sterling, that area. Like I said, I'm in District 4, which is pretty much North Glenn County. District 2 is, I think, the St. Simons Island area.
Mm-hmm.
From that point, from
and some points of
off of
Brunswick.
17, that 17 area on. So,
Okay. And this question is Election Day, a day off for workers. Let's talk about how Election Day should be a state or federal holiday.
yes,
Right.
Everybody can vote without
Right. I mean,
obstacles.
well, like Pam and I was talking about earlier before we came on, I think it should be a state or a national holiday, only because for a lot of workers, it's very difficult for them to get off work for an election day in order to vote. That's one of the reasons why we push so hard to do early voting. But when you talk about getting off for a November 8th election, a lot of the workers, particularly in our community, are hourly workers. So they can't take that time off because it's going to take time off from their job. It's going to take time off from them making money. So you got to look at, I need to make money for my household. But if it's a paid federal holiday, because that's a right of all people, then guess what? We should allow that opportunity to be made for everybody so they can participate in it. Now, the pushback on that I know will be, well, we offer early voting, but if you listen to when Tawana said those dates, I think it should be early voting every Saturday up until the week before election.
exactly.
There's 2 Saturdays that they're pushing, and they actually were trying to take one of those away.
Yes.
So, I think that it should not be where we're trying to restrict people from being able to vote. We need to make it easier for people to vote.
Yes.
Not make it harder.
Yes.
And I think one of the ways you make it easier is to allow that to be a paid holiday, like we do every other paid federal holiday, because this is a cry for democracy. And I mean, you're talking about voting. That's about being a democratic in a democratic process here. So we're talking democracy. So why wouldn't you want to make that a paid holiday? I think that some of the pushback also will be that people won't take advantage of it. But I mean,
and as it was mentioned earlier in the conversation, if you live in an area that is desert to certain things, how are you going to get to where you need to go? And you're going to have to say, well, I need to go to work. I can't vote. So everybody has a reason why or a reason why not to do it. And
I'm sorry. Here's the thing when it comes to I wish that we could have election day as the day off for people to go out to vote, because there are so many bills being introduced day in and day out to suppress a person's right to vote, especially in the state of Georgia.
Yes.
So that's why we have to be strategic when you have different organizations like This Is What Voting Looks Like, the League of Women Voters. You have to be very strategic. Even the Divine Nine and the NAACP. Like you said, what's more important, me going to work or me casting this vote? because if I have to be at work and I'm working 12 hours and the time frame is from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., I don't have that time.
Right.
But I got to make sure I have money to sustain my household. So I just think not making it a national holiday is another tactic to suppress people's voting power.
So I know we just asked that question, but listen, if you had the opportunity to change one thing in how we vote or register to vote, what change would you make?
I would,
Ms.
I would, I would, I
Mr.
would
Matt?
allow for children, for teenagers when they turn 18 and get their license at 18, that they automatically register to vote as
But,
part of
but
that.
but my question is this: you can register them to vote, but are they actually going to vote once they're registered to vote? That's what we need the people to do. You can be registered all you want, but are you actually going to take that registration and be active with it and go the next step and vote?
For me to aid in that, helping them get to that point of registering and going to vote, is the education piece. So one wish for me, I have two wishes actually. One wish is to keep civics in education. Don't take it out. It's not about political preference. It's about knowing the process. And so even once knowing the process, when you educate early voters on the process, they become lifetime voters. I was educated on being an early voter because my grandmother was so actively in the local NAACP. So that's why I am a serial voter. But it went through that education process of it, knowing why you're voting, what that vote does for you. That's my wish, keeping civics and not trying to take it away out of the education system. My other wish is, hey, we just talked about it, making voting a national holiday, especially on election day. Oh, and a third one, early Saturday voting up until the
Vote.
weekend of the actual election, general election.
Okay. And we're running down to the end of our conversation. Very knowledge inspiring and enlightening conversation. Thank you for coming on and sharing that information with us.
You're welcome.
To both of you all, who inspires you?
For me, it's my family, particularly my mom. She inspires me because I feel like that, when you see, I've been raised around strong women. I've seen, and so that's why I say my family, but the women in my family, that's what inspires me, especially my mom. She's still going. She's funny as I don't know what, and she's still going. So that is my inspiration, as well as my daughter is my inspiration, because I want to be the change that she sees so that she can impact change with her generation.
Mr. Mathis?
I guess I would have to be a copycat and definitely say family. My family inspires me because if they see the passion that I have and the desire and the drive that I have to do what I'm doing, then I hope that it carries over to them, because I know that the works that I'm putting in now is to help benefit them later. Um, and plus my family they've always been active voters, even before I even knew what voting was. My grandmother would go. She says she gonna keep it on the news and she going to vote.
Mm-hmm.
Because you got to keep in mind, she came up in that era of with Dr. King and all of that, and she understood the sacrifices that were made because she talked about it. And so I think that to me was something that was just important to me once I became able to do it and understand how important it was, and understanding the sacrifices that were made. So I would definitely have to say that is what inspires me.
Okay. And to both of you all, uh, what is your favorite scripture, phrase, or testimony that keeps you grounded?
Oh, I got so many scriptures, but
Yes.
Wait,
Jeremiah
come on, man. I ain't
29:11.
been to Bible study in a while, so I'm going to.
Wait a minute.
Go
Miss
ahead,
Walker,
Kelly.
No, I was just saying, man. She said my scriptures, man. I feel bad, man. Didn't do no Bible study, but I would say it's something that I use now, and I think it was a phrase that I sent to you from James Baldwin.
I'm gonna use. Okay.
Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed unless it is faced.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. My scripture is Jeremiah 29:11. I hold
Jeremiah
fast to that.
29:11.
29:11. But I have several phrases that I love, but most importantly, one of them is that if you're working on something that you really care about, you don't have to be pushed. That vision pulls you. And I really care about voting. I really care about my community. So getting up in the mornings, getting up out when it's time for us to go, do a voter registration or canvassing. It's not a job for me. It's a vision that pulls me to doing it because I do see better for our community. So I believe that's my favorite statement.
Okay. All right. Well, there you have it. My invitation to a conversation, family and friends. Thank you for listening in. Thank you, Miss Walker, and thank you, Mr. Mathis.
Yes.
Like I said before, if you send me that information, I'll post it on my Facebook page.
Absolutely.
I usually have a quote at the end of my show, but they both said their quotes. So now I don't have one for today. So it will teach me in the future. Don't be trying to steal somebody else's. But I was going to quote them, but I will keep mine. But until the next time, subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I have another segment coming up underneath Invitation to a Conversation. So be looking forward to that tomorrow.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you and have a blessed weekend.
All right, you too. Thank you for having me.